Geekers, I definitely need to take a sip for this one. Why should you even care whether spelling lists work or not? Well, oh, just knocked something there. Let me explain. Okay, so spelling lists do not work. You've probably heard me talk about this on Instagram if you follow the Geek School channel on Instagram. If you don't, here's the handle to follow us on. And I'm going to very briefly explain why, because I've got another video that explains why spelling lists do not work and why you should even care. Why should you even care when you come onto the Geek School Tutoring YouTube channel whether spelling lists work or not? Well, oh, just knocked something there. Let me explain. It's all to do with something I'm calling the Kenya study. If you want your child to improve their spelling and vocabulary, the Kenya study is the thing to keep your eye on. Hi, my name's Joycelyn Akufo. I'm the Managing Director of Geek School Tutoring. If you don't know anything about Geek School Tutoring, head over to www.geekschool.co.uk. We are a tuition provider helping children prepare for the 11 plus and everything around that. So we work with students from reception to GCSE age, supporting them in maths, English and science. So back to this thing about the Kenya study. Now, before we start the Kenya study, I want to talk about why spelling lists do not work. Now, why would it even be worth talking about this? Well, let's face it, if you're a parent with a child who's still in primary school, it's probably somewhat of a battle to get them to do some of the things that you may have been more enthusiastic about doing, or things that were quite normalized for you to be doing at their age, such as reading. Most children today, I don't want to say most because I haven't conducted a study on it, I'll say many children, that's probably a better way. And let's switch the notifications off my phone. So many children do not want to read and they find reading boring. Or at least that's what they'll tell their parents to try and get the message across that they do not want to read. Why is this? Well, think about it. If you could go on Roblox for 8 hours a day, if you could go on Netflix, watch Geek School's channel on YouTube, or all the other channels and some of the time wasting videos and so on, what would you choose? What would you choose? And most children are choosing not to read because of technology. Okay, that's generally the main reason behind it. Obviously, there are some idiosyncrasies there, some unique situations where children are choosing not to read, not because of technology, but maybe they have some other issues with reading itself, you know. But ultimately, it sort of boils down to the fact that children just don't want to read at the moment. And a big part of that is to do with the words. Now, I've always said in my videos that if you want to improve your vocabulary, your spelling, you need to immerse yourself in words. Just like, let's say somebody who wants to get fit, what would you do? You'd find yourself in an environment where other people are interested in fitness, i.e. the gym, and you know, you would somehow find yourself doing more exercise, probably because you pay for the membership, but we're not going there. And basically, in being involved in that type of activity, guess what happens? Fitness comes. Yes, it's a very simplistic example, but that's just an example, okay? Now, I've always said that reading is what will help children improve their writing, improve their vocabulary, and improve their spelling, and this is correct. However, one thing that I've come to understand is that many parents often start thinking about SATs, the 11 plus, really close to when a lot of children have been preparing for a year. So really close to the exam. So we are, by the time this video goes live, we're either end of May or June, depends on how quickly I can edit it. But let's just say we're practically in June, okay? And I am always inundated at Geek School with lots and lots of inquiries for the 11 plus. And you would think that these children are primarily in year 4, which would be the better time to start them. No. Most of them are in year 5. Parents don't realise that the exams take place in September, and some of them do realise that the exam is in September. Thankfully, they've watched a Geek School YouTube video where I've gone through step by step of the process and so on. And they still wait until this time because it's like, well, the exam's in September. How hard could it be, right? Many of them don't realise that actually it's a lot harder than the SATs, number one. Number two, your child has to work at least a year ahead, and their reading age needs to be a lot more than a year. The vocab in some of the passages and just some of the verbal reasoning questions, especially for the SEM style paper, Bexley, Bucks, those types of county selection tests, is far above what's expected of the average 10, 11-year-old. A lot of year 11s would struggle with those vocabulary questions. Some parents struggle with those vocabulary questions, and yet it's still in the 11 plus exam papers. So what do you do if you have a child who, number one, doesn't like to read, number two, has some clear issues with their spelling, number three, hasn't got the vocabulary that is required? So you would know this because they struggle doing the assessment papers in the books. They struggle even more doing, you know, sample papers and so on that you've given them. And you ask them the meaning of some words, maybe when you're reading with your child, and they are just lost. They don't understand how to break down the word. In passages, maybe they might be a little bit better, but if the word is on its own and they're asked to find the synonym or antonym of that, the similar, same meaning or the opposite meaning, they are stuck. Then there's a bit of an issue, especially if your child is preparing for a SEM style test. And to be honest, a lot of the independent schools are now starting to use something called the SEM adaptive test. Last year during the lockdown, many of the schools, well, to be honest, just about every school pushed their exam back. Then obviously due to social distancing and so on, and not wanting thousands or several hundred children who are not students of the school coming on site to sit the exam, because of fears of spreading COVID and so on, and keeping children in bubbles, a lot of them use a computerized, computer-based form of examination, many being the SEM adaptive. And that, anytime you see the word SEM, Centre of Excellence something, why does the M escape me at this crucial time? Anyway, it's a department within the University of Durham. Their job is basically to come up with what they would call a preparation-proof test so that they can test the raw, real ability, natural ability of each of the children. Anyway, I said so much. This happens all the time. Let me just have a bit of a sip. Just bring my thoughts back. Okay, so if you're in a position where your child needs to really ramp up their vocabulary, you need to have them increase and expand their vocabulary, improve their spelling quickly, and you're getting frustrated, they're getting frustrated with you because they don't understand why you're making life so amazing for them, amazing, inverted commas, for them. You need to think of something else, okay? So here comes the Kenya study. I absolutely love this study. Now, I've mentioned in previous videos that I've known for a long time that spelling lists do not do the job. That parents sometimes think they do, that schools, teachers think that they do. And to be honest, sometimes your child's class teacher might not even agree with spelling tests, but the decision may not even be theirs to make. They just have to roll with it because senior management is insisting on a particular way of, you know, doing the vocabulary and so on. I have no idea why something that doesn't work as effectively as other means is enforced in schools, but that is not why we're here. It's not why we are here. Anyway, apart from spelling lists not working, I know that some parents get very excited when, you know, maybe the class teacher has wow words, you know, a word that all the children have to learn and use one a day or something like that. Oh my goodness. I want to be the bearer of good news, but I'm not going to lie either, not on camera. Wow words is also another area of ineffective teaching of vocabulary and spelling to children. Now, one of the reasons why is because there isn't enough repetition. So a child gets a spelling list number 1 at some point in September. Even if you were to test that child on the same spelling without giving them the list to learn again in October, you could try it the day after the test. You would see that they start to forget. And a lot of the problems crop up because they're not taught why words are spelt in a particular way. They're not always taught the meaning of the words. That's another issue. So how would their vocabulary increase? And just imagine, you know, as an adult, think of a language that you don't know, okay? And somebody gives you a list of 10 to memorize, 10 words to memorize, and they just tell you what the meaning is. And so you memorize it because you've been given a week, right? 10 words in a week, like, yes, we can do that, lovely. And you've not touched those words again. And sometime in October, they say, oh, can you spell this word for me? It's a different language. Would you remember that? Come on, like, it's a no-brainer. Of course, you're more than likely not going to be able to remember a significant number of those spellings. Now, obviously, you know, for our children in school, many of them have English as a second language, but even for the ones that have English as their mother tongue, their first language and so on, because they're in the process of learning, you know, their cognition is developing and so on, it might as well be the same as far as I'm concerned, okay? Because they're learning about words, learning about how words are put together, the meanings and so on. It's a learning phase in one's life. To be honest, as human beings, we never really stop learning, do we? But for children in school, primary school in particular, this is a big learning phase. And so you might as well see the comparison there, you know. Yes, this is my YouTube academic study. I'm just joking. But anyway, that's how I see it, okay? And so I understand why it wouldn't work. Now, I know you've been waiting. Here's where the Kenya study comes in. Now, this study took place in 2013, okay? So basically, it's a study that took place in Kenya, hence the name. And you might think, huh? What has that got to do with anything? My child is in the UK. I know some of you are in the US, hello, and so on. Well, it's relevant in the sense that in this study, you know, the Kenyan schools, they speak English in for the study at least. And so there were 2 classes, 35 children each, and the idea was to find out how easily or how better they could help the children increase their vocabulary, because obviously they've realized that some of the traditional ways of teaching vocabulary just was not working. So obviously people are always looking for a good alternative, as we should. So altogether 70 children, and they were split into 2 forms. They're split into 2 forms. You've got a control group and then you've got the research group. And they found that there was a significant increase in the children's vocabulary when they used crossword puzzles to help them with their vocabulary learning. Can you imagine something as simple as that? And the researchers decided that one of the reasons why the children did so well is obviously it reduces the boredom. I mean, I don't know about you and your children, you know, if you're a friend of the Geek School YouTube channel, you've probably seen both of my children on the channel discreetly or not discreetly. But as a mother of 2, you know, both in secondary school, I know I don't look old enough. Oh, thank you for the compliment. Thank you. I'm definitely old enough. But anyway, they don't get excited about having to learn 10, 20 words of spelling every week. And as a parent who, you know, if you're involved in your children's work, at some point in their beginnings, you will test them and you're trying to teach them how to learn the words and so on, because you want to see that 100% score in their books and so on at the end of the week and so on. You're showing some support. You find it boring. You know you find it boring, right? Every single week, this thing comes home and you know after a while that your child hasn't been remembering the words. It's a bit of a chore. There's nothing exciting about it. What do you think the children think? They're not excited by the spelling list. They're doing it because they're good students or because they know they have to. Nothing worse than getting in trouble because of just a short list of words that you could just learn to spell and so on. The researchers found that children found crosswords more engaging, and you know, they didn't see it as work, because we know the minute you say crossword puzzles are associated with non-academic work, you know, associated with recreation, with fun, free time and so on, okay? It's not associated with learning. So the way that they approach the crosswords is completely different to the way they approach something like wow words or flashcards. Everybody knows that flashcards is just another way of learning. Like, some people think flashcards are fun for young children. It's not fun. It's just another way of testing them, right? Oh my goodness. Practice tests and any other kind of review sessions and so on, they all know it's to do with learning. Crossword puzzles was associated with recreation and fun. So the way that the children engage with it is completely different. So they're more interested in solving them. There's motivation to solve the puzzle. Some might even get a dictionary. And, you know, if you're watching this and you have a child of reading age in year 4 or 5 or something, you know that most of the time when they're reading or even doing homework, they won't necessarily get a dictionary when they come across an unfamiliar word. But with crossword puzzles, because it's, you know, a bit of a game and they really want to crack it and so on, they will. So why don't schools use them? The short answer to that is I don't know. But I think a lot of it is because creating crosswords is very time consuming. It's extremely time consuming and oh, it's time for some more tea. I'm being very good on this video. It's time consuming, okay? We all know that teachers are overstretched, they're busy and so on. I was going to say blah, 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 but I want to be respectful because, you know, they are busy and there is a lot to fit into the week's work. Probably busier now with the effects of lockdown and children having such a variance of knowledge at the moment. And basically, yeah, anyway. So to produce a crossword is quite an intensive process. I can tell you that it's a very intense process because for those of you who think that I just come onto this channel to sell, I really don't. If you knew how much effort goes into editing these videos, I could write a blog post happily on the Geek School website. As a journalist, just bash everything out and it's there. But I prefer the videos for some reason. But anyway, it's very intensive making crosswords because it's not just a case of having a word list. You've got to give the clues. That takes time. I know this because Geek School has some books now on Amazon that have crosswords and other sort of word-related puzzles. It's our synonyms and antonyms workbook. It's our vital words workbook, which is new. And they are very time intense to produce, especially if you're doing it with the aim of, you know, developing particular skills for the children, you know, understanding particular word groups and so on. It does take some time. And I guess there just isn't that time, whether it's for the TAs or the teachers or whatever staff, the time just isn't there. And for many parents, the time isn't there either. I know this, you know, especially with everything that's going on now. A lot of working parents are busier than normal. And, you know, all parents are trying to catch a breath with everything that's going on. Summer holidays are almost back and it's, oh goodness, crossing fingers, toes and everything to hope that lockdown will allow us to at least let these children get some real fresh air and, you know, have a bit of fun outside of the home environment and so on. But basically they're time consuming. So, you know, as usual, whenever there isn't a product available, what do? I can't know this stuff and just sit there. I really can't. Especially for something like the 11 plus, you only get to sit the 11 plus once in a lifetime. And if it doesn't go well, that's it really. Obviously there are other routes to entry into grammar and independent schools, but the spaces are so limited. And you want to get it right the first time. Anyway, apart from the books, we have something called the Geek Worms Club. I want to thank my biggest fans, well, two of my biggest fans, Sufyan and Shimail. I can't remember which one of them suggested Geek Worms. So we had Geek Readers, that's what it was going to be called. And then one of them said, oh, what about Geek Worms? And I thought, yeah, Geek Worms sounds a lot more fun and catchy and so on. So we have the Geek Worms subscription box. Now, why would I produce this? Okay, here we go. Basically, you know that when children get a book, let's say an English book, a verbal reasoning book, or a vocabulary book, spelling, punctuation and grammar book, you have, let's say, a 9 or 10-year-old, there's like one book for that age. Once they've finished it, that's it. And you then have to go on the hunt for another book. And then eventually, you know, you run out of resources. And then, okay, maybe you go online and you try and get resources. All of this is very time consuming and often it's difficult to tell whether the freebies and the downloadables and so on online are at the right pitch, especially for children who are preparing for the 11 plus. And it can just be really time consuming and all the time the clock is ticking and you're not sure if you know, you're getting enough in, and it's just a lot. Honestly, it's a lot, even for somebody like myself who runs a tuition business that specializes in getting children into these grammar and independent schools. It takes a lot of research, planning, and so on. And I've been doing this for a long time. A long time. The Geek School's been running officially for almost a decade. So I understand that. And it's not exciting seeing the same bond books, CGP books, and so on. Your children are probably not that excited about doing them, but you know, everybody gets the bond, the CGP, and all the other, you know, ones around it, you know, once they finish that particular publisher and so on. And you know, that you'd say, oh, my child needs help in English, so you do lots and lots of English and it doesn't do anything. You do bits of reading, there's a bit of improvement, but it's still not doing it because it's not enough of what they need, basically. And I've seen this over the time. And sometimes it's so unfortunate to see children do amazingly in their maths, their verbal reasoning, non-verbal reasoning rather, do okay in the English because the vocab for like the GL, the Kent test, or some of the others isn't so vocab heavy, and then not do well in the Bexley because, you know, verbal reasoning counts for 50% of the grade and so on. My goodness, it can be quite a daunting prospect, very time consuming, emotionally draining for all concerned, quite scary, and all the rest of it. And I just said, you know, if you can help, you should. And so the Geekworm subscription box is made of 2 massive booklets. I say massive. It's not like it's so big that they can't complete the work. They can. But they are big enough for them to have enough work every month, and then every month, the next month, they get the next. There's a vocabulary builder which does what I've said, and I've spent a lot of time doing the research to make sure that it contains what it needs to contain. And then there's also the English and verbal reasoning booklet. So your children will start to get that variety. Enough of my sales pitch. Literally just go on to geekschool.co.uk/geekworms club. Okay, I'm going to put the link here. Have a look, you know, obviously see what I'm talking about and see if it's the thing for you or your child. There isn't a lot of time left, so if you have a child in your